Welcome to our Sunday service here in Bangalore. Nice to see so many happy faces. This is an affirmation from Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda. And this morning it is on wisdom. We often hear the expression, sadder but wiser. This is the mark of worldly wisdom, which people equate with disillusionment. Indeed, worldly hopes, sooner or later, all end in disappointment, and sometimes in great sorrow. Worldly wisdom often wears the garb of sadness. Not so divine wisdom. On the spiritual path, the expression should be happier and wiser. For true human wisdom means recognizing at last the pathway out of delusion and toward the light of truth. Divine wisdom is omniscience itself. In such wisdom, there is no shadow of sorrow, only bliss absolute, bliss infinite, bliss eternal. Please affirm with me, with a lot of energy and concentration, out loud. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. A little more quietly with deep concentration. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. And now in a whisper, as I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow towards ever joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. And now silently, with deep devotion and concentration at the point between the eyebrows. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. And please pray silently with me. I am grateful, Lord, for every test you send me. Each time I stumble, help me to learn. Each time my human weakness makes me fall, help me to grow stronger. May I realize behind every pain thy calm, reassuring wisdom. Om Shanti Shanti.
Good morning to all of you and to all those tuning into the webinar here in Bangalore. We'll read from The Path by Swami Kriyananda. This is the chapter entitled The First Days of a Neophyte. The day of our first meeting on September 12th, Master returned to Encinitas. I didn't see him until 2 weeks later, when he was scheduled to preach again at Hollywood Church. The curtains parted, and there stood Master, a deep, penetrating gaze in his eyes that seemed to bestow on each person present a special blessing. Then suddenly he was smiling, radiant with divine joy. We rose spontaneously to our feet. As had been his practice during his early campaign days, he demanded, "How is everybody? Awake and ready," we all shouted. "How feels everybody? Awake and ready." We sat down, inspired by his dynamic power. He led us in chanting and meditation, then gave a brief interpretation of selected passages from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. His sermon followed, an altogether delightful blend of wit, devotional inspiration, and wisdom. I had always supposed that deep truths must be spoken in measured cadences, rather in the style of Emerson's essays. Reverend Bernard had addressed us rather that way the Sunday before. Indeed, his very conversation had a certain ring of gravity to it, and I had been suitably impressed. But Master now lectured in a manner so totally natural that for several minutes I was completely taken aback. Was this the way to convince people of the importance of divine truths? He made no attempt to impress us with the depth of his insight. Frequently, rather, he sent us into gales of laughter. Only gradually did I observe that his flashes of humor invariably preceded some profound spiritual advice. Yogananda wore his wisdom without the slightest affectation, like a comfortable old jacket that one had been wearing for years. He proceeded to discuss different levels of spiritual development. I slept and dreamt that life was beauty. I woke up and found life was duty. But even this, my dutiful ego, I dreamed myself separate from God. And then I woke in Him to realize that life truly is beauty. For the beauties we seek in this world can never be found except in Him. To experience them, we must first be dutiful to His will. Only then can we rise above self. We have not been sent down to earth to create here a pleasure garden. This world is a battlefield. Our highest duty is to seek the Lord. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, Jesus said, and all these things shall be added unto you. Neither be ye of doubtful mind. Finally, Master gave us this invaluable suggestion. Never go to bed at night until you have convinced your mind that this world is God's dream. There's a wonderful episode in Yogananda's life, I believe this took part in Sanitas, where there was a very intellectual university, perhaps he was a professor, and he had a lot of questions to ask of Yogananda, and I think in a way he meant to trip him up. And so he came up with one complicated question after another. And after he shared his question, Yogananda simply said, "Love God." Well, the man shook his head and thought, I don't know what to think about that. And so he came up with another one, perhaps even more complicated, to maybe get Yogananda's attention. And again, what was his great surprise when Yogananda even more forcefully said, "Love God." So the man thought, well, even masters have their quirks. And so, again, he shot another question at him, and again, perhaps even more complicated than the first couple of ones. And again, this time, Yogananda gave him a shock, perhaps of a lifetime, when he said, even more strongly and even more sternly, "Love God." Then he abruptly got up from his seat and walked out of the interview room. And years later, Swami said that the man now teaching somewhere in the Middle West was from time to time giving this example of the quirks and so forth, the oddities of even the great saints. He still hadn't gotten it. And so it is in this world today where we're fed, so much with things to stimulate the intellect, and where the heart, sadly enough, is often thought of, well, if this person is in their heart, then they're probably not all that grounded, and on it goes. Because in this world, the logic is that one has to be very, very sharp intellectually and so on to get through the labyrinth, not to get cheated and all these things. Well, okay, fine. There is the balance that is needed. We have been given minds, and we are in part, as Raja Yogis, part Jnani, part Bhakti, part Karma Yoga, and so forth. And so, of course, that's important, but not to overdo. I love the cartoon years ago that Yogananda, I had an artist write, and actually it was accompanied an article. He was writing on the balanced life. And one of the figures that the artist drew was a man that had very, very strong and oversized muscles. And the thought being that this man was working very well on developing his body, but gee, how about the rest of what was needed? And then there was another man. He had a pinhead. Obviously, he needed to work a little bit more on maybe doing math gym and this and that to expand his brain. And another man, of course, with a huge fat head, and that man no doubt needed to be more in his heart. And so for us, this need, as we grow in wisdom and in discrimination and so forth, this is very, very important for us to understand the balance. And there's nothing easier than to thyself be true, where we take on Swami Kriyananda's counsel. As he said, Kriyananda is an event that I'm responsible for. And in that way, one is sufficiently detached that when we do good and perhaps win an award of some kind and so forth, we say, well, that's fine. God is the doer. And then when we bumble and maybe do something that's quite embarrassing, that even lingers with us for some days, we think, okay, God was the doer. And by doing that, more and more we're able to neutralize these likes and dislikes. And all we want to do, and this is really the way to embrace wisdom, is to be an instrument for God. And we begin to be very enthused to watch ourselves and watch everything. And as we're able to do this in a state which I like to share of amused detachment. I love that combination, amused detachment, because it speaks of joy. Then we begin to see that we glide through our day in ways that perhaps earlier on the spiritual path we thought impossible. That because we've been sufficiently detached, again, not in an indifferent way, that is not detachment. We're missing the point. But in a way that we are in our hearts and that we are in our spines, as the yogis recommend. And as we're able to do that, we start to find that more often than in the past, these insights come. More often in the past, these intuitions come, and they are great savers of time. They help us immeasurably in our relationships. We begin to find that we're less desiring to have that trigger reaction, which is very, very, very dominant in this world, where people even think it's a strength. Someone gives you some kind of a slap or a harsh word, then send them a zinger that will even top what they just sent you. And sometimes that's appropriate and a bit of fun, but other times, and usually not. And we draw great inspiration from Christ's counsel, forgive 70 times 7. And yet we keep in mind we're not doormats. And so we stay fresh, and that's the joy, and alert. That's the joy of keeping the company of the saints. Whose company are we keeping? As Yogananda counseled, environment is stronger than willpower. Whose company are we keeping? Well, we know outwardly enough in the workplace and at home and so forth. We know a bit about that. But really, and in the deepest sense, who's there in our consciousness? And if it's the saints, no matter where we find ourselves, then we have chosen the wise path. As Yogananda used to share, that it would be better to be in hell with one wise man than to be in heaven with 9 fools. And I thought, the big striving to get to the astral world, but let me meditate on that. Would I rather be in the astral world with 9 fools, or maybe spend a little bit of time, who knows what lessons to be learned, in hell with one wise man holding on to his feet? We would soon rise in consciousness and be in heaven. And where would the fools be? Who's to say? And so this path of being the jnani, this path of striving for greater wisdom, is again something that needs to be balanced with heart quality. And as we're able to do that, then there's less of a tendency as we grow in the teachings and we dive deep into the Bhagavad Gita and Omar Khayyam and all of these wonderful scriptures, we don't take it to our egos, which then is just going to contract the energy and send the energy down. We don't want that. And it really is a fine line. I remember in the early years, of course, I was reading voraciously, and I still enjoy to read, of course, very much too, spiritual books and so on. But at a point, I don't remember which book it was, but I put it down and I said, I'm tired of reading. I want to have some experience. I want to have some realization. And, was I being grumpy? Was I out of tune? I don't think so at that particular point in time. It was just fine. There had been a certain amount of appetite for all of this, these deep teachings, but now let's meditate. Now let's learn what it is to truly serve selflessly. Let's see what it is to begin to think, to feel for one another as we would feel for ourselves. And then after some time picking up books again, then I thought, fine. These spiritual books now have even more meaning for me than ever before. As often we find that we'll pick up, let's say, the autobiography of a yogi, which perhaps we've read many times. And we'll think, I wonder if this is a new edition. Because for some reason this truth, this deep truth just pops out. And the timing is perfect and it really is very forceful. And perhaps has at that point in time the ability to change our lives. And so when we think of wisdom, we want to understand that this is a quality that we already have, as is true of all the divine qualities. We want love, we have love. We want joy, we have joy. And in the beginning, that may be a bit of a head scratcher. But as we go deep inside, we find, indeed through meditation especially, but through our seva, we begin to see. And isn't it a lark when we find, and we have to smile, especially in our hearts, that all the things we're seeking, we have already. Wow, this Maya is potent. Really, really strong. This Maya has such power, and there's a respect for that. And we then find that there's even a greater driving force to, as Yogananda recommended, for everyone, especially on the spiritual path. Don't miss the point. Don't miss the point of our own existence. And that takes wisdom. And that takes discrimination. And that takes being the jnani. Because this world is very much created to miss the point. You see it everywhere. Everywhere. It's like there's this, great mantra, whether it's being played through the music or through the billboards or whatever. Miss the point, my friends. If you really want to have fun, miss the point. Those people that are striving for the spiritual life, look at them. They look so grim, don't they? Let's have some fun. And later in life, maybe when we're 80, when, again, the grandkids have graduated university and so forth, then we can, begin to dive into the Gita and all of these wonderful scriptures and meditate. By that time, is there anything left? Does the mind still work? Does the body still function? Do we know who we are and where we're going? I hope so, but it's not always the case. Rather, the thought comes, uh-oh, I think I missed the point. Oh, boy. Well, that's all right, because God has fashioned the reincarnation program. So, rejoice. We're coming back again to, hopefully, get the point. And one of these fine times, we will get the point. And that point will give us so much joy. As Gyanamata on her deathbed, what was she heard say? Too much joy, as she slipped into that state, as Yogananda said, a final liberation. And so I turn it over now to Roma, who will share her inspiration now. And let's again stay centered. Stay at the point between the eyebrows. Stay in our hearts. And that way we'll be protected and inspired.
We're changing the protocol this morning because this is our last Sunday service for 2 months, and we're trying not to be smiling too much and pretend we're really sad, but we really will miss everybody. But it's we think it's a well-deserved rest, but anyway, we do have this rest coming. We're going to see our daughter in New York, and then we're going to spend a month at the village with Jyotish and Devi. So we'll miss you all, but I wanted to start by this poem, and this is from Yogananda, When I'm Only a Dream. I come to tell you all of him, and the way to encase him in your bosom, and of the discipline that brings his grace. Those of you who have asked me to guide you to my beloved's presence, I warn you through my silently talking mind, or speak to you through a gentle significant glance, or whisper to you through my love, or loudly dissuade you when you stray away from him. But when I shall become only a memory, or a mental image, or silently speaking voice, when no earthly call will ever reveal my whereabouts in unplumbed space, when no shallow entreaty or stern centaurian command will bring from me an answer, I will smile in your mind when you are right, and when you are wrong, I will weep through my eyes, dimly peering at you in the dark, and weep through your eyes perchance. And I will whisper to you through your conscience, and I will reason with you through your reason, and I will love all through your love. When you are able to no longer talk to me, read my whispers from eternity. Eternally through it I will talk to you. Unknown I will walk by your side and guard you with invisible arms. And as soon as you know my beloved and you hear his voice in silence, you will know me again more tangibly than you knew me on this earth plane. And yet, when I'm only a dream to you, I will come to remind you that you too are not but a dream of my heavenly beloved. And when you know you are a dream, and I know as I know now, we will be ever awake in him. And as we were talking about wisdom, the greatest wisdom that we can have is the awareness of the presence of the Guru in our hearts. Because the Guru is always there. He is watching us through his eyes. He's seen the world through our eyes, but he's right there. He's serving through our hands. He's loving through our hearts. He's acting through our bodies. He's there. He's our conscience. He's our thoughts. And just behind that is the deep consciousness of his love. Just right there. It's right there. We think it's so far away. It isn't far away. The Guru is not far away. The greatest gift in all three worlds, the scriptures say, is the gift of a true Guru. And we have a true Guru in Paramahansa Yogananda, in Babaji, in Lahiri Mahashaya, Jesus Christ, Sri Yukteswar. We have true Gurus guiding us every moment. And whether we're in the presence of one another, or we're off on our own, or life seems very difficult, or we think we're failures, or we think we're successes, or we get caught in this dream, we need to understand as devotees and as Kriya Yogis that all we have to do is turn our mind and our heart within. And there the Guru is, always with us. We can't go anywhere without the Guru, because the Guru is in our heart. How can we possibly think we are away from the Guru? And through the Guru comes Divine Mother's love. And that is the wisdom that guides us in this world. Divine Mother. Yogananda was a bhakti yoga, and he prayed to Divine Mother. In America, it was very unusual for God to be described as Divine Mother. It was the Divine Father, the centaurian voice, the disciplinarian that's going to tell us where we're off and how to get back on track. But Divine Mother is the mother, and she loves us unconditionally. And no matter how many times we fall, the mother picks up her child in her arms, and she heals that child, because that's the nature of the mother. is to love. When, many years ago, when Swamiji made acharyas, and I was in this group that he made me an acharya, he had us each one come up for a blessing. And he gave each one of us a little advice, just for us, and for each one of us individually. And the advice that he gave me, amongst other things, it was so beautiful that I've kept it to my heart my whole life, and I've tried to adhere to it, and not always successfully. But he said, when you work with people, feel Divine Mother's love flowing through you. And that's all he said. He said, feel Divine Mother's love flowing through you. And as I meditated on that, what that did for me spiritually was to be always trying to be in Divine Mother's presence. Because if I'm going to be with people, that's how I have to be. And kindness comes through, and compassion, and all of the qualities this world needs. That's the real work. He didn't say, go learn how to lecture, go read the Gita from front to back and learn the scriptures and go do this or that. It was a spiritual blessing that he was giving me. Work with grace. Work with what's within you. Work with what's already there, but expound on it and make it grow. That's what's inside of each one of us, is Divine Mother's love. And when we're in this world, we ask her to come through in every situation in our life. There's nothing that she can't fix. There's nothing that she won't heal. There's nothing that she won't forgive. There's nothing that she can't make more blissful and joyful. It's Divine Mother. As soon as you get into politics, as soon as you get into trying to fix this world, and as soon as they did this and I did that and I don't deserve it and how did this happen, just go inside. Feel the Guru's presence and feel Divine Mother through the Guru giving you these lessons. Like it said in the affirmation this morning, thank you for every lesson that you've given me in my life, because through the understanding of myself, then I will be able to feel Divine Mother's presence, and I'll be able to understand again what my goal in life is. Our goal in life is not physical alone. It's a spiritual experience. And as Kriya Yogis, we had a wonderful Kriya Yogi meditation this morning, and we listened to Swamiji. He read the book. It was the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I recommend that book. It's so beautiful. But he was saying, be in the present moment. Devotee. He was admonishing us, oh devotee, be in the present moment. That's where I am. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about anything. Be in the present moment. This is where you'll feel me. And when you can do that, and we can really only do that when we meditate deeply, because we train the mind then not to go off. Our mind is so ready to go off into worry and frustration and regret and wondering and all of it. You know, the mind is just so quick to go off. But when you practice Kriya Yoga and when you meditate deeply after you practice the technique, your mind rests. Your mind becomes calm. And then the stillness of your heart becomes much louder. The stillness becomes louder. And you're guided by the wisdom and intuition. You're guided by Divine Mother. But we must meditate in this world. This world isn't going to tell you to meditate. Who's going to tell you to meditate? Nobody. Your soul tells you to meditate. The soul loves to meditate, Master said. The soul loves it. The ego hates to meditate. So the ego will find a million ways why you can't and shouldn't. It's too busy, I'm too stressed out, this is such a hard time of my life, I can't meditate, I'll wait. And like Haridas was saying, okay, now you're 85 years old and you're finally ready to meditate, I'm sorry. But, you know, there is a story of an 85-year-old woman that was an atheist all her life. She met Master. Master gave her Kriya Yoga, and she was liberated in that lifetime. He doesn't say how old she was when she was liberated. Maybe she lived another 20 years, I don't know. But she was liberated, and she started on the spiritual path when she was 85. But how could she do that? Because she had great devotion and single-pointedness and wanted it more than anything, and knew that when she left this world, where am I going to go? What's waiting for me? And we don't really think about that, you know? You know, Swami said something to us once. He said, every single day you should think about your death. Sounds kind of depressing, but but really, you should think, you could go like that. Where are you going to be in your consciousness? And he said, when you go to the other world, the consciousness you have on this planet is what you take with you into the other world. And you still have to come back and work out all your karma. So if you're trying every day, if you meditate every day, if you serve God every day, if you feel Divine Mother's presence every moment in your life, there is no way that when you leave this planet that you're going to be left in purgatory. I guess they don't have purgatory anymore in the Catholic Church. They said they don't have it, but you're not going to be left hanging. They keep changing the rules. But you're not going to be left hanging by yourself. So think of it. The moments are more important than the years. And the years are what go by so fast. They go by so fast. So we just wanted to leave you with those few words of wisdom. We hope that when we're gone, that you come to the center, and that we're going to be having Sunday satsangs, and everything's going to remain the same. We'll take you with us in our hearts, and we look forward to seeing you when we come back. So God bless you all.